listening to The Daily Show.
The Daily Show?
The Daily Show.
The Daily Show.
On Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
With Russ Kane.
Happy Monday, everybody. It is Monday. You probably noticed that by now, unless you're working on my time clock. Hi, I'm Russ Kane, as all the jingles just said. Phil, Dave, hates the second jingle. I find it quite amusing, to be perfectly honest with you. And if it annoys Phil, hope you had a good weekend. The weather was good. The weather's kind of good today. But that's the great thing. If you're listening from abroad all over the world, we get 4 seasons every day here in the United Kingdom. This is The Daily Show. It's exclusive to Men's Radio Station, part of the Sound Mind Radio Group, along with Women's Radio Station. Now, bit of a treat. Neil asked, I say asked, begged would probably be the word. Pleaded, could he have the day off? Because Uber are pretty strict about, letting people have time off. So I asked one of our favorite listeners, one of our favorite viewers, one of our favorite members of the audience, who happens to be a professional broadcaster by pure chance. You know him as Fat Scotty. I know him as Scott Lyons. Welcome.
Hi, Russ. How are you?
I'm all right. Are you all right up in Are you up in Wolverhampton, Fat Scotty? Is it?
We are in lovely Wolverhampton, and the sun is shining, the birds are singing, and you can't understand a word I'm saying.
No, we get everything you're saying up there, Fat Scotty. It's all right. Have you lived in Wolverhampton long?
Do you know what? I'm Midlands born and bred. I did have a brief sojourn down in London working for what was then London Buses for 4 years. Now, I managed to get rid of this really irritating and broad Midlands accent, which was great. The only thing, my dad was none too impressed. He says, "You don't sound like you come from around here anymore." And I said, "Well, that's fine, Dad. At least I've sort of become more of a neutral accent." And my accent's sort of stayed more neutral over the years, but it's. I know you and I have sort of exchanged banter sort of through the YouTube chat, but it reminds me of 2 adverts that used to be in the television. There was the first one that used to be, "We want to be together." Was that first one? If you remember that, the guy.
No, I don't. I don't.
Graham
Pack, straight in with. Can we have subtitles, please, Graham? There will be a full transcript of the show going up later on the Men's Radio Station website, as well as we possibly can translate. So no, we want to be together. No, I don't remember that at all. What was that?
I'll try and find it while I do that. And the other one was there was an advert. The actor that played H had a line of duty.
Yes, Adrian Dunbar.
Nigel, yeah.
Adrian Dunbar.
He did one that was Pleo. It was always a Midlands accent. He was stood in a bar with all his friends. I'll try and find that. I meant to find the links this morning, forgot about it. These are the 2 sort of stereotypical Midlands accents that people come up with. So
they're not a million miles off, though. Let's not kid ourselves. They're really not. Now, before we get into the main course of the matter, I think of this as an amuse-bouche.
Yes.
Right. LWT, when I was just chatting to you a second ago before we went live, I went, and you said?
That was Thames.
Yes, it was. I completely mucked that up.
Yeah.
Totally mucked that up. And I can't remember what the LW2. Could you possibly remind us?
Dum 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 da 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 da. I used to get that lovely river ident coming across the screen. It was great because where I'm from in the Midlands, before we used to have ATV with the it was called the Zoom ident with the 2 eyes that used to.
Yes. And they used to go like, didn't they?
That's it. Used to merge. That was a great ident.
ATV. Unless I'm going ATV, that's where. Hang on, that's where. Keep chatting. Just that's where this was played.
Wobbly Set Central. Yes, Crossroads. It's called Flooding Back.
enough of that, written by the great Mr. Tony Hatch, who's just one of the
Tony
loveliest
Hatch.
men in the world. I never thought I'd meet Tony, let alone become a pal of his, and the most modest man in the history of the world. And he's written everything, including the theme tune for Neighbours and God, everything else. Graham Pack, back again. Normally the best thing out of... you see,
He's
you've
right.
ruined that. You've ruined that with
He's
a
right.
typo. You've ruined that with a typo, mate. Normally the best thing, it should be normally the best thing out of
Best thing.
out of the West Midlands is the MC.
I
If
get it.
you're watching from abroad and you're thinking, England, United Kingdom, the United Kingdom's a tiny little island. How do we hate each other just 5 miles up the road? Oh, it's what we do. It's completely what we. It's completely
the best
what
thing
we do.
in the world.
That is what we do. That is what we're famous for. We don't have any manufacturing. We don't have anything, but we know how to hate the next county just up the road.
Well, you don't even do that, do you, Russ? If you live in London, you've got the north river, south of the river divide.
Completely.
That's a hell of a thing to do.
It's weird you say this. It's weird you say this, Fat Scotty, because, by the way, you're not even fat. I don't know why you call yourself that. I'm just going to call you Scotty. That's the end of it.
If you see your side profile, you'll understand why, but it's, yeah.
Salad dodging, Scotty.
Yes. Don't mention,
we'll leave it
don't
there.
come in with your bad language.
When I did my stand up in LA a few times, and I was explaining, I said, "You think you've got it bad?" And I did the lead up to the North versus the South, and they think that I'm going to go and talk about the American Civil War, which I studied at school. But no, what I said, what I then reeled them in with, was it was the North-South divide in London, and they were like, "Really?"
Yeah.
Yes. Once you cross Vauxhall Bridge, you're in another world. It's completely different, totally different. North London, South London, like that. I know, because I've been living there for years and years and years, and I like it very much. It's all good. North, South, it's all lovely, but it's different. Right. Do you know what? Before we get on to some of the subjects that I've been digging around with, the logo that you've got up, which is very charming, Scott, of the LWT. Until Phil Dave told me only a few weeks ago, I didn't realize it was meant to represent the River Thames.
Yeah,
I didn't know what it was.
That's what it was called. It was called the River. It was actually called the River Idents because the first LWT ident they had was a yellow background with like a white circle that sort of used to sort of semi rotate and used to have London Weekend Presents, and this tricolor river ident was originally, before the T that you see there on the screen, the T didn't exist. It was just the L and the W that used to flow across the screen, but then somebody forgot to mention that it's TV television, and it became the LWT. But that's the building there, which I think still exists.
It's still there.
The
It's still there, but they're getting rid of it. They're not. I think they're knocking it. I think they're knocking it down, or certainly going to renovate the whole thing, because that really was. It was it was nice because I worked near there for over a year, and it was a nice part of the world. Now, as you're here, because I'm curious, because I've never met you, but you started to come on the show and make rather witty comments and stuff like that. Tell us briefly, because I've got plans for Christmas. Tell us briefly about yourself. Who are you? Whom is Scott?
Well, I've worked in radio since the early 90s. I've sort of worked in radio, latterly in logistics, and now working in community radio, as people know it. We prefer to call it local radio because
I much prefer local radio. I think community radio always makes you think you're coming out of half a shed. And make Nobby is sort of knocking up some woodwork 3 inches away from your left ear.
It has got somewhat of a stigma attached to it. So community radio is now the new local radio, which is really having somewhat of an on-surge since a lot of radio stations have started networking. So if you listen to many of your local stations, which have become Heart, Capital, Smooth, Greatest Hits, they're all an amalgamation and merger of very small local radio stations. So the station I'm involved in now is hyper-local for one of the county towns here in Staffordshire. On top of all that, I also work for a company in logistics because it's got to pay the bills somehow.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a serious question here? And I'm not taking the piss. When I'm driving around, which is rare these days, I'm hardly using my car at all. you see all these lorries delivering logistics, and I always sit. I have no idea what's in the lorry. I'm genuinely, I don't understand what it means delivering logistics, because they're not a thing. They're not like a Kickstart, are they? I mean, they're not a thing.
No,
What is
it's the logistics is the function of moving a commodity or a service from A to B to Z. So somebody who's involved in logistics, so to speak, which is what the business I'm in, is looking at how you get the item from A to B or Z, but also then look at the infrastructure, is how you actually manage that process internally before you even think about putting stuff on the lorry and before it even gets delivered.
Okay.
So logistics as a whole is a much more complex matter, but it's most of the stuff you don't see unless it's behind the scenes.
Let's get back to something which is a very hot topic for me, something I feel very, very strongly and very passionately about, and it is to do with mental health. Although, and you've touched upon it, but people listening and watching may not realize why I'm so keen. Local radio, all right? I don't like community radio. Local radio, I'm talking about like BBC Radio London or BBC Norwich or any of these other stations, provided a wonderful service for people in that area. The UK shouldn't be London-centric. And why I link it to mental health, and Scott, jump in whenever you want. Why I link it to mental health is that we feel so disassociated from everything. We feel powerless. We feel tiny. We feel pushed from pillar to post. COVID and the way we were treated totally exacerbated that situation.
Yeah.
Local radio, presented by somebody who lives in that area, who knows that area, who loves that area, who knows what the issues mean to the community, not a word that I use often, is so important, because it makes you feel less like a little ant or a tiny cog in a huge, endless, perpetual motion machine. And I think it's, and I'm just going to nail my colours to the mast. I think it is a disgrace what the BBC are trying to do. An absolute disgrace.
Yes. I completely agree with you.
And before we, and I just finish with this, and it's no different from Bauer or Global, these huge radio companies who went round, bought up all the little local radio stations that had nice followings, fired everybody, and then ran it out of one studio in London. Because the guy sitting in Leicester Square for Global, let's say, and I'm not picking on them for any other, or wherever Bauer is, I can't remember. He doesn't know what goes in Shropshire. I mean, if you showed him a map, he wouldn't know probably where Shropshire is or where the Wirral is. He's got no interest. Why would he? He's not from there. It's irrelevant to him. And it's only about the money. We pay, commercial radio, Scott. Okay. They're all about being commercial. The BBC, we pay for them. We pay the BBC with our ridiculous, expensive license fee. The least they could do is offer a local radio service. And I think it's really a shame.
It's what the BBC are currently doing at the moment, I think, is an absolute abomination. I cannot understand their rationale. Yes, they want to divert money into other areas such as streaming, online content, which is fantastic, because that whether you agree with it or not, that's the way the world is moving now. Everybody has one of these. They've got a smartphone. I mean, my life is absolutely dictated by a smartphone. It's not social media posting, and I'm checking my diary and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of these presenters, as you've alluded to, radio for me is the most single, intimate media there is. There is nothing that comes close to it. And I know you and I and many other people have mentioned sort of yourself and Neil. You've worked for Capital, even sort of 30 years ago when local radio was in its heyday. So if you lived in Liverpool, you got Radio City.
Yeah.
If you
were in Glasgow, you had Radio Clyde.
Glasgow, you had Radio Clyde. In Birmingham, you got BRB and Beacon. All of these stations, you know, you worked at Capital, Neil worked at Capital. Capital FM was the radio station as everybody wanted to be part of. If you were in the media and you worked in radio, your aspiration was to get to Capital. And I think the beauty of working or seeing a station like Capital or BRMB or any of the big cities radio stations sort of their time, and even in recent years, up until probably I'd say 10 years ago, is that you had an emotional connection with your listeners.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Even as somebody who worked in these radio stations, you understood that not only you were going to get the fame and the celebrity and everything else that goes with it, which is great. And it's great to massage.
Irrelevant. Got to stop you. Sorry, man. Got to stop you. No, I couldn't care less about that. It was the work. I only do the things that I do.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in fame. I'm not interested in celebrity. I don't like any of that. I'm interested in the work. That's what I like. The rest of it, I couldn't give a monkey's about.
As a younger guy, I mean, it was very flattering. But then, as you become sort of older and more mature, and you understand the importance and the power of the medium of radio, as we're talking about how the BBC local radio is now being absolutely decimated.
They went on strike last week. You know that.
They did, yes. The National Union of Journalists.
It was kind of interestingly kept out the papers, but BBC Radio London went on strike.
Yep, as did WM. They went on strike themselves. But
Yeah.
all of this emotional connection which you hold with your listener, and specifically, and Neil will get this, having done overnight radio, late night radio on any radio station is the most connected part of the day. Breakfast is great because you're getting up, you're going to school, you listen to the radio for 15 minutes, you're out the door. Late night radio has a very different magic about it, and that emotional connection. And we saw this now probably more recently with COVID and with a lot of other things prior to that, where people who have been that isolated, who were away from their family. Yes, they were on the end of a phone, and
it's not the same, is it?
It's not
a bloody phone.
But you listen to that voice that comes out of that radio, and you are talking to them. And I'm going to name drop a couple of people now. There's a presenter who is about to finish on BBC Radio WM and all of the stations in the Midlands, who does a late night talk show, Caroline Martin, and a phenomenal broadcaster. She has worked late night radio and talk radio now for the best part of 25, 30 years. Caroline's connection with her audience, and I listen to Caroline and I work in radio, so that just about tells you enough of the power of what she does. To have that connection and have real life people talking to on the radio, and I've listened intently to a lot of the content, and I've learned a lot about her interview techniques, and I still learn today. Her connection with her listener, and every person is an individual, as you'll know, Russ, you're talking to a single person. As soon as you open your microphone,
here's why I feel so strongly about it, and I really do. It's a real passion of mine, and I've done a lot of late night radio with the two greats. One is Petri Hoskin, one is Joanne Good. Both are personal. Both have become good friends. Both are wonderful people. Both are the same off mic as on mic. They're fantastic. Because put yourself in this situation that you're lonely, or you're feeling lost, or you don't have many friends, or you've moved to London and you don't know anybody. And here is somebody. Now, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. On Talk TV, where I do quite a lot of work as well, the second highest rated show after Piers Morgan was Petri Hoskin's show, which started at midnight and ended up at 4 a.m, and I was there every week. Midnight till 4 a.m. You would not think the listeners' Vinegars would be big. They were huge. Massive. Second only to Piers Morgan. What did they do? Cut it back.
Yeah.
Cut it back. I mean, and so Petri had to go with it. Joanne Good, a hugely loyal following who adore her. What are they doing? Well, we have yet to be shown. For mental health, it's so wonderful to have that connection, to feel part, to feel somebody is just talking to you. It's what we try to do here on Men's Radio. You know, I wanted it to be the opposite of Radio 4, which I've managed quite easily.
That's the connection I was going to make next, Russ, is that you look at what BBC and late night radio and the late night broadcasters do, and this is the assimilation with mental health. You can have all the family and all the friends in the world. You can have 20, 30 people that you would call close friends and relatives, but that doesn't stop you feeling as though you're isolated on your own. You can feel lonely in a crowd of people.
Very much so. That's a huge issue.
It's an awful thing to feel as though you're part of, and it's one of the reasons, and I mentioned this to you sort of before we came on air, that I wanted to be a mental health first aider. And part of working in broadcasting and part of dealing with in my day-to-day job, which is predominantly in a female environment, it's there's a huge.
And I've got a big question coming up for you, Scott Lyons. Big question about that in a minute.
Okay. So for me to sort of move away into or move into rather looking at mental health first aid was hugely important to me for two reasons. Number one, as a man, as your typical sort of alpha male, and you never talk about your feelings, and it's all laughed off, and you have a really naff day. And some days it does get on top of you. You're working all the hours that God sends. You've got a family you're trying to provide for. You can see that your own kids are suffering, and there's times. I'll say now, there's times when I sort of sit down in the office. I had a moment this morning where I'm thinking, do you know what? There's times when you feel really lonely in life. And it's no reflection on your friends and family.
No,
it's just how you feel.
It's just you do. Do you want to know why I do this? And why I started this with Howard Jameson?
Yes.
On a handshake? For this. David Green has just written it. If it hadn't been for MRS, Men's Radio Station, I'd be a lot further behind in my recovery from a mental breakdown. Some of the guests have massively influenced the direction I have taken. Massive thanks, Russ. That means more to me than I can express in words. Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's why we're so passionate about doing this.
And sometimes it's easy to talk to a complete stranger, just like yourself.
Of course it is.
You do it yourself.
Yeah, sure. But also, when I was sort of writing about what we were going to do and discussing it with Howard, my business partner, and Penny, I didn't want to use the word safe space because that's always like a Californian university. The wind changes direction and the kids have a nervous breakdown. I mean, this is just bollocks, isn't it? But I wanted a non-judgmental space. I wanted somewhere which could be long form and where you wouldn't be judged with people, and it wouldn't be adversarial. Of course, and it's happened rarely, I think twice, where a guest come on and clearly talking garbage, which I thought was dangerous garbage, and we shut it down because it's a nonsense. I'm not going to have that. We're not going to be a platform for just pure stuff which could be harmful. I'm not going to do that. But otherwise, it's been wonderful. That's why we want to do it. Now, there's an item in the paper today that the I think, chairman of Tesco has said that men are now nervous about working with women. And I made a little note of that, and it spurred me on. Why I want to bring it up now is that you said I work in an environment predominantly with women. So my question to you, Scotty, is this. With the way that the world is in 2023, do you feel nervous working in an environment where you're the minority and the women are the majority, that you're going to do something that would be misconstrued, misunderstood, or simply taken out of context?
Yes.
Wow.
I've always been brought up to mind my P's and Q's, be respectful to women. I've always been the same. I still open doors for ladies. I still give up my seat on a train or a bus if I use them.
Stop,
However,
stop. Girls, ladies. If you're watching, I want you to comment, please, on what Scotty's just said. Two schools of thought. I do the same. I open a door for a woman. I always do that. I always go after you. And it's not sexist. It's not me showing I'm an alpha mate. I think it's just basic manners. Do you feel the same? I once stood up on the tube in London to let a lady sit down. I got an absolute mouthful. Absolute mouthful. I got lecture.
we were in Hammersmith a few weeks ago.
Down again.
We did the same thing. We got a tube at Hammersmith going to town. We got a change at Wood Lane and then walked 200 yards to get a White City and get back on again. And as we were coming into the stop before Wood Lane, I could see this lady got on. There was plenty of seats, but she laden up with shopping. I said, "All right, love, do you want to have a sit down?" In my deepest, darkest Broad Midlands accent. And she looked at me as though I was about to sort of mug her. And thankfully, I got my wife and my daughter. And it was just priceless because it was almost as if it was an alien concept to her that anyone, but be a man, would stand up and allow her to have a seat nearer the doors, which she laid up at the shopping safe trying to trawl it through the carriage. And even now, I'm the kind of guy that if I see somebody that's broken down the side of the road with the hazards on, I'll pull the car over, ask them if they're okay. Have you broken down? If it's
Clearly, you're not a Londoner.
Oh, do you know what? I've only ever made that mistake once in Dollis Hill. It was
Londoner would go, screw you.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
They just don't care.
And I do, but I do.
So what did she say? Did she object to you calling her love, by the way, which is just a Midlands, like north of Watford Gap? It's fine. In London, suddenly you're a sexist pig.
I have said it in sort of my normal parlance in conferences when I've been to logistic conferences and other events. And I have been pulled up on it. Please don't patronise me. I'm not patronising, but I find myself, and I think it's unfortunately the world we're living now, I'm finding that I'm having to apologise for the way in which I'm speaking so I don't offend someone.
Really?
Really. And
wow.
I think nowadays...
I just read this out. Then I want to know what it is you're apologising for. Grandpa, I always open a door or keep a door after I open the door after I go through it. For one, I get annoyed when they don't say thank you. I have a simple way of dealing with that. I let them go through, and as they walk away, I go, "You're welcome."
Yes.
Every time. Doesn't matter who it is. Emma Webb. Blimey, I love manners and banters with both sexes and open doors for everyone. Why has each gender now fear such connections beyond? Well, this is it. This is the world we live in. I'm going to come on to another thing in a minute. And M says this: men are shocked when I open the doors to be polite. I'd be thrilled, and I go, thanks very much. What are you apologizing for? What language are you apologizing for? Because it sounds silly, but it's such a blooming big issue because you can get yourself now in ridiculous hot water for nothing. For nothing.
What I apologise for is for I can see how by using certain language and much of what I will call colloquial and local language seems to now be phased out. So I call people love or bab. There's another one. There's a great Birmingham Midlands one. It's called people bab. How are you?
Bab.
Alison Hammond uses it a lot. She calls people bab. Yeah. But again, if it's somebody you're not familiar with, or it's somebody that really, you can tell when somebody really takes offence by saying, "Oh, I'm just so sorry if I've offended you, I apologise." Because the problem
here's the thing, Scott, and again, maybe this is just London hardness. Do they take your apology at face value and go, "Oh, that's okay," or do they think you're being sarcastic?
It depends who you're talking to. Most will accept it so they can take the moral high grounds. Well, I've got an apology. And others will say, well, sorry, you've already said it, so thanks for coming. But on the whole, it's one of those. I mean, a friend of mine who's also works in radio, I think he posted on his he made a comment that once he was driving through, he was driving through Birmingham, and he must have seen a lady breastfeeding. As she was walking, he said, "Well, why would you walk if you're breastfeeding in case you
She
trip
was in a
over?"
hurry.
And well, yeah.
She couldn't get Deliveroo. I don't know.
Well, you can imagine it's on tap. So he
So-
got absolutely lambasted, and he was on. She found him on social media. She hunted him down on social media, and she reported him to Ofcom, even though it wasn't something that was done on air. Wasn't a comment he
Hang
made
on,
on the
so,
radio.
whoa. So he said this private. He said this on social.
He put it on Facebook,
on his own.
Facebook page,
Yeah.
and she took great offence to him even asking the question. He wasn't making judgment; it was a question that he asked. So she actually spoke. She complained to Ofcom. Ofcom then made representations to the organisation that he worked for and asked for the context in which it was being. The question was asked. Eventually, it was thrown out, although she did continue to pursue him through the local press.
Clearly, she had a busy life.
Very. So going back to your original question, these are the kinds of reasons that I will apologise. But one, I'd hate to think I've offended anybody by doing anything, so I will apologise. I just think it's.
I'd add a caveat to that, Scotty. I'd have a caveat to that. I would always be the first to apologise. Anyone who actually knows me, I'm the first to put up and go, "Hey, I effed up. I'm sorry." That's the thing to do. You know, I hate to rake it up. Philip Schofield had done that. He'd still have a job. That's my view. Controversial, but I honestly believe. I'm not going to go down that particular rabbit hole. But you know, this whole having to. I mean, for years now, when I'm on public transport, which is nearly every day, because in London, what's the point of trying to drive? Thank you, Mayor Khan, for making life miserable. Is this? I shut my eyes. I get in, and I do that. I close my eyes. And back the curtain. Because I don't want to make eye contact with anybody. God forbid.
Yes.
God forbid. So screw it. I just shut my eyes. No one can say anything. You know, because I'm not looking at you. Interesting point from David Green. The interesting point from David Green here. Maybe society is having an identity crisis. My pal, Larry Viner, Larry said to me years ago, he said, "Do you know what? I think the world's having a collective nervous breakdown. I think we're living in mad times. I mean, mad times. Not happy times at all. Mad. I mean, literally mad."
Yeah.
And Larry Viner's point about the world having a collective nervous breakdown. What the hell? I've got a reason. My theory as to why. And David's saying this. Maybe society is having an identity crisis. Even the lines between basic good manners and harassment are blurred now. Yeah. I don't talk to anybody. Just keep my life simple. I won't talk to people. I'm just not going to get dragged in to your bullshit. I'm just not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get involved. Sorry, I got stuff to do. I got a life to lead. I'm not playing the game. I'm not going to do it. You know, that's why I keep my pals close. That's it. And we know what the rules are because we're pals. But if I don't know you well, I'm very formal.
Yeah.
I'm very formal. People are always surprised. One thing I've never understood is that when a woman is at a social event, it could be anything, the guy goes, "Oh, lovely to meet you," and gives her a kiss. The hell's that about? And it's been accepted for decades. And more, only shake hands. And some of the women go, I'm not being standoffish. I don't want any nonsense. Shake your hand. Nice to meet you.
Correct.
The end. The end. I don't know what you were expecting, but for me, you will get a handshake. Nice to meet you. How nice.
Yes.
Boom. The end. That's it. Not having any nonsense. Not having these nonsenses. So you are nervous. So the ex-chairman of Tesco, or the ex-CEO of Tesco, was correct that men are nervous now working with women.
I think you've been saying the other way around. If you are a woman working with a large group of men, and it's again the working in certain areas of broadcasting, the newsrooms where I worked were always predominantly men, and you would have the occasional female newsreader or journalist coming in. And I think the same could be said for women with men. Women could feel probably for different reasons, and nervous.
Totally so. Absolutely right. And I do want to just put the other side of the coin is that for decades and decades and decades, as long as you can remember, women have been horrendously harassed, sexually harassed, verbally harassed. It was awful. I'm not a tree hugger, you know that, but it's awful. I don't know one single woman friend of mine who has not had varying horror stories from their times when they've been harassed in the media, in banking, in finance, in advertising, doesn't matter. Horrendous. Horrendous. And it's quite right. That should stop. Of course it is. Absolutely. It's completely unconscionable.
It needs to be called out. Any kind of behaviour like that towards a female. And again, this is probably where we will both agree on this, is regardless of how nervous I would now feel about speaking to a female. If I saw a woman who's been, you can usually tell these things. Your observational skills are pretty much honed into this, and you can see that somebody's uncomfortable. I'll always say, "Are you okay?
Nice.
Everything all right? Can I help you?" If she says, "No, I'm fine, thanks very much," and off you go, and then you'll probably find that those that need the help, it's great. But I completely agree with you. We do live in a. I think this is a man-made problem. As in a male-made problem today, is that men have gotten their own way far too much, and we have created this problem by having such a misogynistic approach, and that women now, do feel very, very nervous around men, and men feel nervous around women. But it's, for me, I'll carry on being the way I am.
Do you not see a pattern here? Do you not see a pattern? The pattern is divide and conquer. The pattern is divide and conquer. Now, I don't wander around wearing a tinfoil hat. I think most conspiracy theories are money-generated bullshit created by initially pretty smart people who know how to kick the hornet's nest. And then it's picked up by idiots. Flat Earth. You're an idiot. It's round. Get over it. Stop being a moron. But when you look at Soviet spies from 20, 30 years ago talking about basically the long game, how you sow dissent, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense now that everybody is divided. I think race relations have been set back 25, 30 years. I genuinely think that. Through what's happened, which is just people are having to force to take a side, men versus women. I'm not even touching trans because I'm not. I'm going to go there. So no one can take offense because I ain't going there. So it's all part of how can we destroy the West? Well, pit everybody against each other. Make everybody have to sign up to one tribe or another tribe. And if you're not in my tribe, I hate you. That's what it's about. TikTok is a perfect example of that. And social media is a perfect example of that. Now, leading on to that, the radically sexed education in schools, again, moves on from what we were saying. Where do you stand on that, Graham? Sex education in schools, should it be radicalized or should it be just that? Do you think it's dangerous?
See, there was a series on Channel 4 recently where you got partially clad or naked people that were in front of a group of kids, and they were being taught sex education. See, perhaps I'm just very different about this. There's certain things you need to know as a youngster as you're growing up. The biological aspect of your body, the emotional side of having a relationship. I don't personally think that we need to go down a whole route of having adults as near to stark naked as you need to be without actually being stark naked in front of children. I just don't think it's. I personally don't think it's appropriate. If it was my children, I would be very, very uncomfortable. We teach our
I'd be
kids
livid.
You teach your kids to maintain an air of privacy with your bodies, but by presenting them with a complete stranger's body, or even anybody. I mean, I never used to, when my kids were younger, I wouldn't walk around naked. I've always sort of, always worn, shorts or boxers or anything when around the kids.
Of course.
That's just how I've always been. But to go down this whole new way of teaching sex educational relationship, is it personal health, social education, as they call it nowadays? I just find it's a very, very dangerous road to tread, because where does that stop? What are you going to end up in 20, 30 years' time? Are you really going to be showing, children exactly what the male and female, or male and male, or female and female bodies do with each other? There's some things you don't need to go any further than.
There are also, I think we have to throw into the mix, Scotty, a lot of narcissistic people who just love this. This is their idea of heaven, because they're absolute narcissists. Look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
And they buy into this because it's their moment of fame. And it's hard to dissect that away. There's two things here. There's two current things which I think sum up where we are in terms of mental health, in terms of how people have to live their lives. There's a case in America where a woman, and I'm not making this up and it's not a joke, is suing her parents for giving birth to her without her permission. If you think you've misheard me, no, I'll go through it again so you can unpack this absolute nonsense. There is a woman in America suing her parents for giving birth to her without her permission. This is where we are in 2023.
If you look back about 15, 20 years ago, Russ, the Americans were the first to create divorce between where children could divorce their parents. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Where does this end?
Well, it will only end. Look, I want to go back to Asa Don Brown, who's coming in from the northeastern United States, because he's telling us where it'll end. And he's senior in the psychotherapy community in America. Absolutely, as a society, we're no longer willing to call out issues that are incredibly egregious. We're no longer willing to make a stand for our moral or ethical consciousness. We've become a society of depraved ideologies and weak standards. And he says, I got to tell you, François Pascal, bonjour, ça va, oui? Pas mal, j'espère. Gosh, I wish I was at home talking to you about narcissism in my life. Well, yeah. And the stuff that you've had to endure because, being one of the world's most beautiful women. Let's be honest about it.
Amen.
Let's
at that point, can I just say, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be sharing be on the same show that Francoise is on. I've got to say, huge fan, but for a message from her to pop up on the screen while I'm here at the same time.
Yeah, Francoise is such an interesting woman because she went as one of the most beautiful women in the world. I'm just saying it, but it was a fact. Everybody was crazy about her. And then, and of course, that was the time where everything was at its worst. And Francoise, I mean, imagine being that good looking and trying to have a normal life. The stories she could tell would be a jaw-dropping. But Asa Don Brown's point is absolutely right. If you stand up and say, you're suing your parents for not getting your permission are you just mad? Where are the people saying this? No, they'll run it through the courts. Well, the people who are saying there are something like 52 or 54 sexes. What? Really? Is there? And I think it's like the problem I have with this, whereas so much has set race relations back 20, 30 years easily, after all the wonderful work in the gay community, the wonderful work, the incredible progress, I think it set it back. This is just my view. my view. I've been trying to get an LGBT plus show on Men's Radio for a long time. And I mean, this is wonderful. And I think the excesses of this, the brouhaha, no pun intended, I just realized what I did, over Bud Light, I think it set it all back because people now can't differentiate between gay rights, which I'm all for, 100%, and insulting everybody else like they did at Bud Light.
Yes.
I love this from Graham Pack. If the woman in America was she shoved back to her mother's womb? I mean, yeah. What is she? I mean, just nuts. Francoise, would love to come on your show one day and talk to you. Francoise, we would give you an hour special because you deserve it. Let's set that up. We'll set that up over the next few weeks. You will come on. We'll do an hour special because your story is absolutely extraordinary. Now, that's at one end with the woman suing her parents for giving birth without her permission. We're going to contract a Ouija board. And the other one is, and this isn't, this is like my grandkids' generation, right? About consent. Now, consent is absolutely important.
Yes.
And I grew up meaning that no means no. That's it.
Correct.
No means no. There's no middle ground. There's no, oh, but you know, we went out for dinner and you invited me back to your flat. No means no. That's it. End of discussion. There's no wiggle room here. Doesn't matter, you know, but you gave me all the signs. Bullshit. You say, good night, bye-bye, cheerio. That's it. Right? No means no. But now, and I've been told this, that before one person kisses another, I'm talking about kids, right? At 16, 17, 18. They often ask, and I'm not making this up, somebody to film, usually the girl, to film them to say, yes, I grant permission for Fred Smith to kiss me. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. Jeez.
And it is awkward. And I think, as you've rightly touched on, consent, no means no. There is no grey area with this. It's yes or there's no. And that consent can be withdrawn at any point. It doesn't matter where you are and what you're doing. If somebody says no, thank you, stop, that's it. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Where do you go with this? Is, you know, is filming someone kissing really the right thing to do? I can understand that now.
You're not filming them kissing. No. Let me.
Film the consent.
I consent for, you know, Doreen Jones to kiss me, or vice versa. In other words, that consent has been recorded. That's where. So
what do you then have to do if somebody decides to stop kissing part way through? Then they have to then start recording. Well, actually, following my earlier consent video, I am hereby withdrawing my consent at the stage. Where's the continuity?
We used to have a young producer when we started the stations off. He left some years back, and he was a single guy, nice guy, and said, you know, how do you go out dating? Oh, you can't. And I said, well, when you go to a bar or a pub, you see somebody that you like, you know, don't you just go up to them and say, hello, can I get you a drink? Oh, you can't do. And he was shocked. And Phil, Dave and I were like, what? And it's like, no, you can't do that. What do you mean? What do you mean you can't do that? Well, you've got to do it digitally. And I'm like, but they're standing 3 feet away from you. Why don't you just go up to them and say, hello, I'm, you know, Fred. How do you do? May I get you a drink? If she says no, she says no. In worst case scenario. No, you can't do that. And I was like, wow. And I mentioned this to one of my kids, right? Now the twins are now 25. And they went, yeah, pretty much it. And I went, what? It's going to get so daft I won't be able to kiss my granddaughters goodnight without their written consent. Not easy when they're 20 months and 10 weeks. I bet they're getting a lot of sleep in that household.
One of the teething finishes, one's about to start climbing.
Oh
Graham,
man, that was the
jeez.
thing with twins. One would go to sleep, the other one would wake up. One would be fed, the other one wanted to feed it. It was just endless, blooming endless. We had something I wanted to touch on. Yesterday was Father's Day.
Yes.
It was Sunday the 18th. It was Father's Day. It was very nice. My daughter invited me over for tea. Very difficult day, Father's Day, I think, for many, many people. And what was very emotional and very heartwarming, and I saw it more this year. I don't know about you, Scott, if you noticed it. More people saying, adults, I'm talking about, I really miss my dad. Happy Heavenly Father's Day to whoever it might be. And loads of people were doing it. And I think absolutely valid.
I think it's lovely that people feel they can do it, and that's for me. That's the great side of social media. That's the wonderful facility that people can use to be able to express their feelings for the parents and to be able to show their pride and to show how happy that having a father figure made them feel. I mean, I spent my day with my kids. They sort of like a revolving door in our house. As one comes in and one goes out, they're working. And I went to a pub quiz last night with two of my kids. They decided to go and go to a pub quiz. So there's me with a glass of shandy, the two kids there, just literally chewing the fat. And it's right what you're saying. You shared a photograph, and I think I commented on it. And I said how much of a likeness that you got to your dad with his 12-foot cigar and his sunglasses on. I've got to say, there's certain images of my dad's still alive, bless him. He drives me bonkers, honestly.
Well, let him drive you bonkers. Enjoy it.
Love him to pieces.
That's what I say.
But there's photos now that I've got of my dad that are just iconic, and that there will be the photographs and I've said to him, that's the photograph that's gone on your coffin when you eventually cark it. So that's going to be the one that everybody remembers. And I've got to say, that photograph you share with your dad, as I say, with his 12-foot cigar, would have put Tarrant to shame with his sunglasses on. And I've got to say, those kind of photographs and memories are the things that really do keep their memory alive, Russ. It was just a lovely photo for you to share with us. It was
well, thank you. But you know what was very touching was everybody was coming out and saying, yeah, it's Father's Day. And for those who had their fathers, it's a lovely day and they were enjoying it.
Yeah.
And those whose fathers have passed on, no longer around, I think it's a nice thing. But it's a tough day. And I think only really recently are people publicly saying, you know, Father's Day, yes, tough. It can be tough for some people, as Mother's Day. Because there's nothing worse when you get all these adverts. Hey, got your card ready for your mother? And I go, well, that's going to be a bit awkward. I don't think she's going to be able to read it. In Bushy Cemetery, thanks. But some of the companies have got a little bit more cachet, a little bit more emotional savvy, and they're saying, would you like to opt out of these Mother and Father's Day reminders? Yes, limit right. Of course we would. Of course we would. But I think it's lovely that people now feel secure enough, and they won't be mocked for saying, you know, I mean, you know, I'm at my age and I miss my folks every day. It's ridiculous. I know it's ridiculous, but I miss them. I'd give anything to pick up the phone and have a yak with my mom. It'd be beautiful. I'd love that. Get up all the goss and tell her what's going on. She loved all the gossip. And I mean, Francoise, absolutely. Look at this. It's tougher losing a father for a young girl. Horrible.
Yes.
Horrible. And of course, I'm not trying to top this, Francois. Please don't think I am. But my kids lost their mum when they were 5. And there's always going to be repercussions for that. No matter what you do, how much love you show and everything else, there's always going to be a reaction at some point in their lives when you lose your mum at 5 years old. Bloody awful. By the way, Scotty, I've really, really enjoyed having you on the show. It's been a pleasure. I hope you're going to come back. Thank
you.
Em says this, Emma Webb. I get jealous when I see people buy. Oh no! Don't get jealous. Don't get jealous. I get jealous because it's not their fault. their mum and dads happen to be alive. It's not like they've done anything clever to achieve that. I get jealous when I see people buy Mother's and Father's Day cards. Miss my parents, even though they didn't always deserve anything from. Yeah, I was told yesterday about a guy who died. He was apparently a horrible guy. By the way, I don't know his name. I don't know him personally. And it was time for the funeral and the eulogy. This was recent. This was in the last couple of weeks. And the son got up and absolutely gave his father, standing by the coffin, both barrels. He'd been saving it up. And he just said, what a horrible, horrible man you were. You were vile and just laid into him, even though he was dead. And I think that's healthy. I think that's really healthy. Better than what a wonderful gun. Everyone's sitting there. Well, he was an absolute bastard, actually, in real. What a great thing to do for the son to just.
Some people are going to find their time for closure. I mean, I always said to my kids, I said, look, I'm not perfect. I don't profess to be perfect, and there's going to be people that you'll meet in life that absolutely just despise you for no other reason than the fact that you just can't get on with it. Totally. And I've said to my wife many times, look, eventually when I pop my clogs, there's two things I want. Number one, I don't want a soppy funeral. I just want people to turn up, wear what they want. In actual fact, I might decide to tell them they've got to come in fancy dress, for Christ's sake. Oh, no. All people in fancy dress would be great. But imagine that turned up at a crematorium with Banana Man, Superman, and the cast.
Oh, God, no.
The cast of Cat in the Hat. But also, secondly, I want people to be honest about what they thought of me. I don't want people saying he was such a great guy and all the rest of it. They didn't like me. Just say, look, didn't like him. But you're entitled to your opinion. But it's right what you say. You pick your times. And for the guy that, as you say, emptied both barrels over the coffin, I just think I shouldn't laugh really, but I think that's a fantastic.
But you know what? Interestingly, the congregation totally agreed with him. I mean, no one was sitting there going, "Oh, Miss Marple." No, everyone was sitting there going, "Absolutely, you got that guy down right. You got him." I think. Honesty is okay. It's all right. It's kind of all right to be honest. It's just a bit easier. Tough because we try and dress it up and wrap it up in a nice bow and make it look pretty. But sometimes you just go. So let's kind of move towards the end. And we've got Azadon Brown in the States saying this. As a clinical psychologist, I've worked with individuals whose parents were incredibly egregious personalities and they still love them. It's true for all sorts of victims of abuse. Oh, God, yeah. My opinion is the need to feel and be loved. Wow. And David, yeah, you're absolutely right. From the outside, it's easy to be a big shot. When you're on the inside, it ain't so easy. And look at this from David Green. What a really interesting point. That's a whole new can of worms here. I mean, yes. Scotty, you're lucky. You see your kids, you're living with your kids. You're obviously close to them. I see mine. All the time, apart from the one in Texas. I don't say that much because he's thousands of miles away. Father's Day can also be tough for fathers who don't have access to their children. Horrible. But it's not for me to speak because we don't know the circumstances of why.
People will say that as well, Ross. It goes the same for Mother's Day. Some mothers are doing the jobs of two people. They're doing the job of a mum and a father. They're trying to keep their kids on the straight and narrow and do what their dads would have been like. And equally on Mother's Day, when you've got single fathers trying to do the job of a mum, it's not easy. You don't get a manual when you become a parent, and you do the best you can.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? You get a manual for like a coffee grinder. You get a manual. Microwave oven or an air fryer, massive great manual, right? Most important thing in the world, being a parent, nothing. Good luck. Bye.
Show kids love.
I remember every time we brought one of the kids out of the hospital, and of course, especially with the babies, with the twins, out of the car, I remember looking over the roof of the car going, and now what?
What you did?
You don't know. Oh dear. Scott Lyons up in Wolverhampton. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed chatting to you. Thank you, by the way, for being so supportive of Men's Radio Station. I really appreciate it because we've never met. We don't know each other. And your comments and everything, your support during the shows, as with everybody, hugely appreciated. That's it. Hope you enjoyed us. Just kicking the stuff around and chatting beans, as one of my kids says. You're chatting beans.
Yeah.
I love that. We'll be back, Neil and I, on Wednesday. Until then, have a lovely day and try and stay out of trouble. Bye, gang. Bye-bye.